Hi there, everyone, and welcome to this discussion on immersive exchange, collaborating on XR projects across borders. This session is part of the UK House programme, which runs alongside South by Southwest. It's brought to you by the Future Arts and Culture programme, presented by Arts Council England and British Underground, and this session is in partnership with Story Futures Academy. My name is Becky Gregory-Clark. It's really nice to be here with everybody today. Thank you so much for joining us. I am the head of Immersive for the Story Futures Academy programme, which is the UK's National Centre for Immersive Storytelling and for the National Film and Television School. If you haven't come across this initiative before, Story Futures Academy is a programme run jointly by National Film and Television School and Royal Holloway University of London. It's funded by the UKRI, UK Research and Innovations Audience of the Future programme, and we are essentially a big upskilling initiative backed by the UK government to try and help the UK's creative workforce become the most skilled in the world in using immersive technologies, so VR, AR and beyond for storytelling. And one of the big initiatives we've been running in the last year has been called the UK-Canada Immersive Exchange, which we run in collaboration with 4 other partners, and I'll come on to explain a little bit more about that in a moment. But it's been a brilliant programme, and it's all about trying to foster international collaboration. So it's a great jumping off point for this discussion today, and we really hope that you find it useful. So I'm delighted to introduce the panel today to talk about this topic. We have Nathalie Clermont, VP of Programmes and Business Development from the Canada Media Fund, Antoine Carroll, who's a producer at Atlas 5, Sandra Rodriguez, Director and Producer of Visiting Lecturer at MIT and a member of the UK cohort, the UK-Canada Immersive Exchange cohort from this year, based in Montreal. And we have Persis Jajé-Maravala, Artistic Director at ZU UK, who is also a member of the cohort from this year, based in the UK. So this conversation is going to focus on international collaborations and how they relate to immersive media projects. We think they can bring huge advantages to creatives in making these kinds of projects, but they are also really challenging as well. And there are, certain difficulties around running projects like this as well. So we're going to dig a bit into that and talk a bit about the future of this for this industry. So before I go any further, I'd like to introduce each of my panelists to introduce themselves a little bit. I'd like to first go to Nathalie Clermont, who can tell us a bit more about what you do. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you, Becky. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nathalie Clermont. I'm the Vice President of Programs and Business Development at the Canada Media Fund. The CMF, in fact, is the largest funding agency in Canada. We support both television production and digital media, whether they are linear, interactive, immersive, so the gaming industry, the XR, VR, AR, and other type of digital projects. We do so every year with a budget of approximately 350 million Canadian dollars, so a very significant amount. And we've been around for more than 10 years now with all of our programs. So it's a pleasure to be here today with you.
Thanks, Nathalie. Can I come to Antoine next, please?
Hello, my name is Antoine Carroll. Contrary to Nathalie, I'm a French from France, so my accent, you can hear that I'm a French producer and co-founder of Atlas 5, which is a company based in Paris that is focusing on doing immersive storytelling. So immersive storytelling can be interactive, can be linear. Sometimes you have controllers, sometimes it can be in augmented reality, in virtual reality. You have a lot of ways to do immersive storytelling, but what we do is usually non-gaming content, and that's why we try to focus on. We did the last 4 years, we produced 12 projects in virtual reality and augmented reality, mostly based on international co-production, which I think is one of the reasons why Becky invited me to the panel today.
Thanks, Antoine, absolutely. Could I go to Jajé next?
Hi, everybody. Hi, so just a quick note before we start. I have a slight disorder, and one of the symptoms is known as derailment, which means in simple terms, in stressful situations, like this one that favors fluent speakers, I can experience a sudden flooding of thoughts and firing all at once, and that can trigger a short-circuiting when my brain just blacks out to recalibrate. It might not happen, but if it does, please don't worry about me. I have support here, so I'll be fine. So I am Jaji. Thanks for having me here. I come from Yemen, but I live in London. I'm a director and a designer of experiences that can happen in many different formats. It can happen in a field, or in a shopping mall, or on a phone, or in public phone booths, on walls. I devise these experiences with different kinds of people: sound designers, game designers, sociologists, coders, mostly. I am the artistic director of ZU, whose work is mainly in the fields of interactive theatre, hybrid art, and innovation in general. And I describe our work as audience-centric and participatory, but most importantly, they are events that seek to eliminate contemporary loneliness by taking apart and dismantling narratives that are peddled by late-stage capitalism that hurt us, and that hurt our societies, and that hurt our humanity. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jaji. And lastly, Sandra.
Yes, so my name is Sandra Rodriguez. I'm a creative director of immersive and interactive experiences, currently based in Montreal. I come from a background of documentary filmmaking, where I had to do a lot with nothing, meaning you could take pictures, cut them out, and do a stop motion animation with them. And all means of creation in my vision are equal. It just means you have different means of expression. So in recent years, I've been working increasingly in virtual reality, and the latest projects all combine virtual reality and AI. But with a small twist, I think the human body is also an affordance for storytelling. So adding to these tools, the human body as a way to lead narratives through movement, through our physical presence and immersive worlds. And I've been toying with teams that are situated in different places of the world. And I think it's exciting. So perhaps we can start a conversation on how well that goes and why we're excited about working with people wherever they may be.
Brilliant. Thank you. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so just before we kick off, I thought I would give just a really brief summary of the UK-Canada Immersive Exchange as a programme, just because it's a useful sort of jumping off point, I think, for this conversation, because it is a programme that was designed entirely around immersive content makers and trying to foster international collaborations and exchange, but also co-production specifically to try and help them get off the ground and help these creators to work together. So it's a collaboration. It was put together by 5 partners. So in the UK, it was Story Future Academy and Arts Council England. And then in Canada, the partners are the Canada Media Fund, the Canadian Film Centre, and Canada Council for the Arts. And we all sort of shared this interest in trying to boost this space with the different kinds of creators that we all work with. And in a nutshell, it is a talent development and co-production programme for UK and Canadian creatives and producers who want to work with immersive tech, or in many cases already do work with immersive tech. And we took on a total of 24 creatives on this programme from a field of about 500 applicants. So it was a very popular programme, which we were really pleased to see, and it really speaks, I think, to the appetite of doing projects in this space. And they comprise a mixture of creative leads who are artists, filmmakers, theatre directors, visionaries of all different kinds, and producers as well, who between them will have the business and creative skills and immersive production experience to make these projects a reality. And the programme has 2 different parts. So the first section that we've just completed is a sort of talent development programme. It's a formal training programme, if you like, to try and help these creators get to know each other. Of course, we thought we'd be doing it physically, and we've done it all online, and in some cases in headsets. But you know, that's the way it's worked, and I think it's worked pretty well overall. And then the second part is an opportunity for these creatives to then pitch for a ring-fenced fund of £300,000 or 510,000 Canadian dollars to help get these projects off the ground. And we wanted to do it because we thought that there was appetite for it amongst creators that we speak to, and opportunity to gain from it. But because, you know, this immersive sort of sector is a very nascent sector in some ways, the co-production element as a sort of formalized process is not as understood in this context as it is perhaps for other forms of media. So we saw a need or a gap for some support there, and we ultimately wanted to try and lower the barrier to entry for creatives as much as we could. And so we are in the process of seeing if that has worked, and hopefully we will see that in the coming months. So I'd like to come first actually to Sandra and Jaji to ask a little bit from your point of view, because I know both of you also have other experiences with international collaboration as well outside of this programme, but I'm interested to know what appeals to you about co-production and international collaboration, generally speaking, and also why particularly you wanted to join this exchange and what was useful to you. So if I could come to Sandra first.
Yeah, so I think it's a dual answer. So on one end, you were asking what leads us to want some support or interest in a program that can push forward collaborations. And I've seen in past experiences how you may walk into a program. I've had the chance to participate in programs where it was kind of a matchmaking between countries, just trying to ensure that there's potential matches made. And you walk into a program with more curiosity than you have intentions, but suddenly discovering studios with an unexpected style or partners that have an unexpected point of view, you suddenly realize the potential and opportunities and get really excited about what could happen. So I did come with kind of an apprehension that if it was a UK-Canada immersive exchange on multiple weeks, then that meant there are some links bound to be made, or there's potential for not just mingling in a cocktail event with international visitors, but really kind of digging into getting to know other people, wanting to work with them, seeing more their point of view or their way of working. So partly that was my hopes in entering the program, seeing how UK partners, but also other Canadian fellows that we know of their work, but we just rediscover their work and rediscover their way of collaborating with others. I think that's really kind of a plus. So participating was a must. And why the UK in particular? I've always loved being in the UK or meeting UK collaborators, but it's always been usually at festivals or showcasing your work, and they are there as well. And it's never crossed my mind to work alongside a UK production company, simply because I think I am based in Quebec. Most of our collaborators are often French from France, or Francophones or Anglophones from Canada. And in that context, UK doesn't seem like a natural match. But for a specific project, I was already working with a UK-based choreographer, and it just made perfect sense to try to discover what else we could find as partnerships between these two countries.
Brilliant, thanks, Sandra. Jaji, same question to you.
Yeah, I applied to the program, I think, because someone brought it to my attention, and I remember them saying that it seemed like there was a real commitment to a more progressive approach towards difference and diversity, where it was being touted more as an excellence, you know, rather than something to be tolerated or, you know, a tick box exercise. And I was quite suspicious, if I'm very honest. Mainly that's because if you come from a background like mine, suspicion just comes with the territory. But I also felt at the same time it was important for me, having just published the Post-Immersive Manifesto, it was important for me to start getting out there a bit and defending the roots of, let's say, performative immersivity, which, like Sandrine mentioned, is like completely located in the body and completely about the space that we can mediate between people. And I wanted to kind of defend that, really, and defend that space in particular from kind of complete total co-option from the commercial immersive scene, the immersive industry, which is like super tech heavy and tends to occupy quite exclusive spaces. And I was, yeah, and I guess I applied because I was expecting also to be taken out of my comfort zone mainly and taken into unexpected places, which I definitely was, and meet unexpected people that, you know, and that's the thing that kind of generates innovation, and being exposed to stuff that I wouldn't ordinarily have been exposed to. That's the important thing, I guess, about a program like this. I wanted to do it because I quite like co-authoring stuff and experiencing other cultures and seeing other pieces from other cultures as well. And I guess it has brought me into contact with people that I just simply would not have crossed paths with in my real life, in my, you know, actual life, and the way where I live as well in London, and the sorts of groups that I work with, and the sorts of groups that I work for. So in some ways, it's also been quite eye-opening. It's been brought into sharper relief what the industry models are, and the program has really supported me a lot in challenging a lot of the white supremacy and colonial thinking that comes along with a lot of the privilege that this industry benefits from.
Brilliant, thank you, thanks both. And maybe I'll come to Natalie next, actually, because Natalie, you're the CMF is a partner on the program, but obviously the CMF has a huge amount of other experience around international digital media initiatives, and I'm just keen to know your experience, sort of appetite for collaborations like this, and why you think it's important to have incentives like this for people.
Yeah. In fact, co-productions have always been eligible to the CMF and in all of our programs, whether it's in TV or in digital media. However, since 2010, we saw very few digital media co-production, and we felt it was important to stimulate co-production in the digital media sphere. We feel it's important both on a financing level for sure, but on creativity also, you know, sharing experience, sharing stories, and also to increase the potential for audience. When you have a partner in another country, you augment your chance of having your project seen by different audiences. So for the last 5-6 years now, we are collaborating with different agencies around the world, like the CMF, similar to the CMF, to create specific incentives like the one we have with the UK. The previous ones were pretty straightforward, where with the agency, we've put a call for projects, in fact, to support or the development or the production of digital media. Very few in television, it's mostly in digital media. And we select the best project. With the UK, it was really different, as Becky explained, because it was much bigger, in fact, because all of the training part of it and how we presented people to each other and, you know, try to work as a cohort instead of working with individual producers, trying to find the right partners and everything. So it is very different. We did something similar with the National Film Board here in Canada and a different organization in Israel. But I think the UK one is a very specific model that we've been able to put together following, you know, a long search of the right partners. In fact, we've been looking to work with the UK for many years, and in September 2019, I think it was, my God, time flies, we organized a symposium between different organizations in Canada and different organizations in the UK, and it's through this symposium that we found the right partners to develop this incentive together. So that's how it came about. Great.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Actually, it's kind of ironic to think that it's actually it's a co-production in itself, even just putting the program together, actually. So we've kind of got the inception of co-productions going on here, I think. But I think hopefully it will all pay off at the end. Antoine, I'd like to come to you next because you and Atlas 5 have a huge amount of experience. You're quite a unique company, I think, in this space, really focusing on co-productions. It seems to be a really fundamental part of your strategy and your the way you approach business. I just wonder if you could tell us a bit more about that. Why is that? What are the big advantages you see for working this way?
I think that's a very vast but really important question. And I'll try to be precise to reply. First, I think we're pretty unique because we decided not to do fundraising. So we're not a company that have a lot of private money and that can spend hoping that the future will be there, that I think will be. And that's a choice we did. We want to stay independent the longer possible. We don't exclude to fundraise later, but right now we're independent. So meaning we need to make money to spend money. We need to make money to pay our employee. We don't have money in the bank that's will last for a few years. So we need to apply the same rules as any co-producer in the world. We need to finance our project, and we need our project to be at least at the like at zero at the end of the production. You know, then maybe the sales will bring us money, but at least we need to finance the project. And making VR is not cheap. Making VR is kind of expensive for a lot of different reasons. We have much more frame per second than a classic short movie animation. We have more things to modelize and to animate because you have a whole world to create and not only a square. And you have a lot of R&D to do because it's pretty new, and you add interactivity into that. So of course, when we do a 30-minute animated short movie in VR, we have a budget that is maybe 3 to 10 times more expensive as an animated short movie, you know, and I think that will change. You know, technique will be there, it will evolve, but right now today, it's kind of expensive to do. So if it's expensive, we need to finance the project because usually, like any co-producer in the world, need to finance his project to be viable. And co-production is one of the ways to do that. Because if we try to summarize, there is like 3 kinds of people investing. People that want to make profit directly or indirectly, like selling headset through a movie or making money on the sales. People that want to have an audience or renew their audience, like a broadcaster that want her audience to stay there and go to new technology, or people that want to create employment in their territory. Like a lot of subsidiaries in state will give you money if you spend this on the territory because they create employment for that, and that's a benefit for the whole country. So as a producer, I just have a quote of my project. I have like 650,000 euros for this project. So my director will be happy, I will be happy, and we'll do an amazing project. So I need to find the 650,000 euros. And to find that, I need to go to different kind of country to speak to all these different people to make them share the risk. So I can find some different broadcaster that will share the windows of exclusivity. One broadcaster will take Europe, the other one will take the US, the other one will take China, and then they can all put a piece of the puzzle of my quote inside, and then I can go to different subsidiaries and employ people in different countries that will collaborate all together. So the main reason to do co-production is because we have to be honest. Then thanks to that, a lot of positive things happen. Great collaboration, amazing artists that we will not find without that. So I'm happy that we have to do co-production because thanks to that, we discover a lot of things that we wouldn't have if we didn't have to do co-production. But the main thing is simply, the main reason is finance projects that are not cheap to do. And that's the only way for us to make that happen.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's explained it really well from your side. And actually, it brings me on to the next question. You've already touched on some of this, but what are the specific reasons that that immersive content particularly may stand to gain, or immersive creators may stand to gain from looking at this? So you talked about the relative expense and complexity of these projects that are partly necessitate this. I wonder, I mean, Sandra, for example, do you have any thoughts on this subject? Why is it immersive content specifically? What do people have to gain? What are the advantages for immersive creators?
I think I'm not sure how it applies specifically only to immersive content, but definitely to content where you have to negotiate between creativity, new languages of a medium that's emerging, and research and development. So there's a definite technical component, openness to explore new ways, and the storytelling or the narrative and the experience that you want to share. I think that particular combination could happen in other media than just VR. But it does have this, or immersive medium, but it does have this particularity of technology, some type of research and tinkering, and creativity. And for me, when you can look outside the box, or at least discover new people to play with in that sandbox, that was a definite plus. So I'm giving a recent example for projects where I've managed to work with studios that used a platform called V4 or VVVV, because they are designers and essentially their design background led them to use that platform. And we were so excited when we saw the results. It's not Unity and it's not Unreal. So the dichotomy of the type of game engine that you're using to create, we're always stuck with what we have as an access. But if I hadn't worked with partners that work in a totally different field, that could have happened still in Montreal, but there is a kind of an ecosystem that we're used to. So within that ecosystem, the studios that I would have access to use the similar platforms. As soon as I reached, in this case, it's a co-production with Germany, our German partners have themselves their co-productions, and they've used German-owned IP platforms, such as V4. Suddenly it opens up other possibilities. And I was really surprised to see the questions we had on that project. What type of engine did you use? How come it's running so smoothly? How come the visuals and the colors are so bright? And I kept thinking, well, we ran it on V4, and I could see the question marks for so many people saying, the what game engine? And it's a German-based IP for a more open software game engine that works fine for this particular project. On our end, we do have IPs and creativity and support for certain fields, such as increasingly artificial intelligence here in Canada, for instance, or different uses of AI that I can see are attracting collaborators elsewhere that are knocking at the door saying, I would need an AI specialist. Do you know anyone in Canada that could have support? So it's not that countries have an ownership of talent, but I do think that different types of infrastructures in different countries help support certain types of creators to develop their field. And so when you can tap into these specific talents, it kind of opens up, in my perspective at least, what I thought was possible or what I thought was expected. It's just, I think Jage mentioned it, it's a challenge to one's own imagination, right? You are nourished by encounters, and part of it is meeting something totally different and out of your comfort zone. I think Jage mentioned comfort zone. I think that's something very important. Even when we think we're outside of our comfort zone, having that meet up with a different ecosystem in and of itself is getting out of your comfort zone. It's a clear push to creativity.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, yeah, we've talked about financial advantages, sort of finding talent as well, and other sort of creative cultural exchange of ideas. I think there's maybe something said about audience reach as well, which is sometimes connected to the financial side, but not always, but it just giving you more pools to fish in from that point of view as well. Jage, from your point of view, what would you say, what from your side is the strongest reason to think about this sort of either co-productions or even more loosely sort of international collaborations, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really obvious, like the benefits of how there's just an enormous wealth, right, in being able to just share stuff with people that are really different from you, and are from completely different cultures and things like that, where you can have where their circumstances has meant that they've developed different skills and different ways of looking at the world. I think obviously that's like a really important and clear benefit of why any co-production might exist. But it does worry me. I mean, sometimes I think it just can't be co-production for its own sake. Doesn't there have to be something that is meaningful and organic, and rather than something that's kind of forced or sort of brought together for its own sake, like co-production for its own sake, makes little sense to me. When it comes from something that is like a, you know, an interest in a reason to be there, a reason to go to another place, a reason to host someone, some kind of other situation that involves these bringing together these completely different perspectives, somehow like complementing each other or filling in each other's gaps or something like that. These exchanges are so important. Yeah, and I do think that, like, you know, you hear a lot about the concerns being a lot more located in how to reach more funds, how to reach more money, how to reach more investment, things like that. Whereas it's important, I guess, to hold on to the slightly more obvious reasons, especially as we go into a kind of, you know, a post-COVID situation. I think we need to look at co-production like completely differently, right? I mean, a pre-COVID situation of co-production surely has to be rethought. And in my opinion, we should be looking at the post-immersive now even, and post-immersive participation has to be centered on what it is to be a human being in a late capitalist society. And I think this thing about kind of trying to go back to normal or trying to go back to, I like the Zainuddin Sadat says that there's this phrase that everyone keeps using at the moment called the new normal, and it's the one that kind of conceals the most and says the least. And the thing is that what is normal? You know, the old normal was the problem, and so the new normal will be equally problematic. So if we're going into a post-normal world, we're transitioning now. There's a time of upheaval. It's a time of not knowing. It's a time of social and cultural messiness with these parallel realignments of power, and very little at the moment deserves our trust. And I think that's a problem in terms of wanting to look at paradigms and values from the old normal that have no place now, wanting to look at these old orthodoxies. And this is, like you mentioned earlier, this is like a fresh industry. This is something that is avant-garde in that sense. So I'm just hoping that our way of answering that question is taking into account the hyper interconnectedness and the interdependent and complex nature of our globalized situationing, which brings us somehow like kind of constant, you know, it makes the world not really closer, but just sort of Constantinas everything, because it also can bring more chaos, right? There's more chaos happening in currencies, in more pandemics, more extreme weather situations, more political turbulence, more cultural upheaval. So how are we as an industry also responding to that, rather than just kind of like being in a vacuum and ignoring the world outside, and having to rethink this idea of growth? I think we need to rethink it. So when I hear a lot of the time, we need more of this, we need more money, like co-productions are very, very expensive. International co-productions are necessarily expensive. So they're predicated on a kind of need to like Antoine said, at least break even, at least break even. And that's not a cheap thing, that's an expensive thing, but it conflicts a bit with me, because I think we need to, as a society, move into an anti-growth model, because it's the obsession with growth and more that's, you know, caused our devastating relationship with nature, with the planet, and even with each other. So we don't want to create work that is going to even more atomize society and create zones of exclusivity. And these zones of exclusivity do that. So I think it's something we've got to watch out for.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jaji. Does any members of the panel want to comment on any of that?
I was going to say there's a huge irony with the fact that there's kind of a balance that keeps being unchecked or need to be checked. I was going to say this balance made me think what we're losing in the fact that we're trying to co-produce or collaborate now all at a distance in COVID moments and all in confinement. Well, you know, we haven't traveled as much, for instance, with current collaborators. We had funds allocated initially to travel and meet and have workshops together to kind of close ourselves for a good week and, make sure that the ideas are flowing and that we have a creative process that's in person and really felt and shared and experienced. That what not being possible, suddenly, well, we're not traveling as much. And maybe that's also good, in the balance of things and looking at our effect for the planet. But we spend so much time on Zoom and thinking about some of the challenges of co-production. Part of this is the current thought that we had to rethink outreach, rethink where we could reach our audience. How will they see the work? You were mentioning, Jaji, who is this work for? If we have to think of all these issues, suddenly not being able to access the same public in the same ways means that you're on your toes all the time to think about other alternative platforms, other means of accessing. And because of confinement in the current situation, they rely increasingly on technology. But that technology is also problematic because it relies on access and who accesses that technology. So I kept finding myself with these past confined international co-productions to find clear pros in how agile we become at working all at a distance, and how we can not have to focus on the current collaboration in chunks of moments where we're together, but really keep a running flow throughout the months that really seems to move nicely. But at the same time, we're constantly conscious that the means that we're using now are also a problem, and the means we're using also limit the ways we can create. And so it's a constant keeping us on our toes. And I don't mean here to say that there's no issue. I just mean to add perhaps to the comment that it's part of what attracts me in the first place to immersive spaces. There's a lot of people willing to question the means, question the technology, create with it, disrupt it. It needs a couple of different individuals willing to look at uncharted territories. I know the terms has been used a lot, but it is an uncharted nascent territory. So we need to look at a way to envision, well, if these are playgrounds that are less limited and a little bit more free, how do we ensure that we can still keep that freedom even with the constraints of confinement, where we're all at a distance, at a distance, and we need to collaborate with one another. So I was surprised that we found different ways to do so. I'm not sure how, Antoine, you find a difference between now and previous international collaborations. Maybe you've traveled a little less, I'm not sure.
I think for me as a producer personally, there is not a big changing. Like I did a movie with Argentina. I never went to Argentina, and so for me as a producer, it's not a big change. I'm not the one supposed to travel a lot. So for me, the FOMO will be more on the festival and the market side. For the co-production, I think it's more different for artists. Like of course, when a director cannot go to a home for 2 weeks to shelter himself with a screenwriter, I think there is a lack of exchange. But thanks to Zoom and all the things, we find a way to still make that happen. And I think that's how we are. The show must go on, and we need to continue. We need to pursue our dream and the way of do what we need to do. And if it was supposed to stay like this for 20 years, we will continue for 20 years, because that's how we are, human being. We adapt, we survive, we adapt. We have no fun in doing so, because Zoom is not as cool as having a beer with my scriptwriter, but so be it. So I think for me as a producer, there is not a big change. For a lot of people around me, there is a little bit, and I'm sad for them, but I think it will soon go back to, I will not say the word normal, because I don't want this to focus the debate on that, but go back to something where a human relation on the day-to-day will come back more. And I think we'll take some benefits around that, maybe allow more the employee to do when they work at home if they want to. Before it was something that everybody was screaming, no, we need to have the team spirit, be at the office every day. You need to go to meet an actor and take a back and forth to LA and fucked up the planet, just for one meeting. So of course, I think some positive thing will come, will be born thanks to that. But still, yes, there is something we need to adapt on all that. But for me as a producer, it's not a big change.
Great, thanks. Natalie, I was just wondering from your point of view, what you've seen that's changed.
I agree that, life goes on and people will continue to create. That's what they do. That's what they live for. However, I think the relationships are missing. Co-production is kind of like a wedding. You have to find the right partners because you will be there for a long time, sharing very personal experiences, values on how you work, what you want to say to your audience. So, currently you are dating on Tinder, like finding the right partners. You don't have that special connection with people that you meet in festival or at events, and I think it works for now. Will it work? I don't know how it will work on a longer term, because it's so important to find the right partners. It's so expensive, it's so time consuming, there's so many challenges doing co-production. Great rewards though, but it's complex, so you need to find the right partner. It's never better to do it in person and share with people face to face and work with people in the same room, as Antoine just said. So we'll see what the future holds, hopefully a near future.
Great. And I think we can't have, sorry, Jaji, did you want to add anything to that? Sorry.
No, that's okay if you wanted to move on. That's okay.
No, it's fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, where am I? I think it's interesting, like what industries haven't been touched by the pandemic. To me, just seems so kind of like alien and shocking to even be thinking along, like hearing that, and it only serves to sort of more embed the idea of certain industries being kind of like really exclusive. And I think that the tech world, and we saw a lot of tech in this program, there is a lot of tech in terms of a commercial immersivity, and that's already very exclusive zone. And then the international co-productions have already said they use networks that are exclusive, and so you put all of these things together and you're talking about some hard-hitting exclusivity right there. And these zones are normally accessed by people from fairly advantaged, socio-economic groups, and of course then you get some scallies like me that happen to be able to jump into programs like this one. But I think it does talk to how inequality is a backdrop against this industry, and that scales across the social and the cultural and the aspiration. And I think that the industry suffers for this. I think that it suffers for it, and there's a real diversity of thought, and that we have to be careful about promoting. The other thing that I think happens that I wanted to mention is about promoting new tech as if it's a value in itself. It's not like Sandrine mentioned that, what is it that tech can do? How is this tool going to make us better as a society, better as people, better at communication, better at relationing? Rather than kind of fetishizing the newest thing on the market and what it, and the kind of gadgetry as a value in itself, because it's obvious, right, that it can also be really harmful. We see at the moment how big tech is enabling India to target its climate activists, for example. And so I think about this this cool acronym that I've just come across that I want to share with you, which is weirdos. We are all weirdos. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it's a term that comes from psychology. It's an acronym for Western educated industrial, from a rich country and from a democratic society. And so we have to remember, weirdos like us are in the minority. We're the minority group. We're not the global majority. The global majority don't live in that vacuum. And So people do not live in circumstances that enable access to the kinds of things that we're talking about. And I think we then have a responsibility to create projects that speak to us, because who is the work for? Who is it really going to benefit? Is it just self-serving, our little, niche corner bit of the world? And what is the contribution to the world? And so I think if we need to accept that the world needs changing, then do we then require a paradigm shift about thinking about international co-productions? We need to ask productions about who is this kind of production really serving? And the weird acronym is based on a complaint in psychology, which is about how 96% of psychological and behavioral studies are conducted on weirdos in the way that I've just described. And yet research is framed as universal. What is this universal? This universal is just in the minds of weirdos and in the way that we talk to each other as if we are the world. And it's just so generalized. And I think that there's a systemic bias in who we think of are the users. Who are the players? Who are these users? Who are you getting to play test the work, for example? I think that is a very, very important part of our industry that we need to reframe. It's a very useful pretense to think about the term player or user as if it's neutral. It's not neutral. Hannah Nicklin talks about this really well, about how it's a societal neutral concept. And there's this kind of everyman idea that we fall back on, and it's usually a white, able-bodied, cis-het, English-speaking Westerner. So to finish, in order to create, I think, ethical and fairer projects, especially international ones that are being co-authored, I think we have to kind of decolonize our thinking and remember that if the masses are people, then white, cisgendered, het, middle-class people are a minority in that. And so our projects really need to foreground that fact.
Thank you, Georgie. I think that's really very powerfully put. I think we touched on basically the big theme here is about access, I think, and how can we make this more, these kinds of projects, this kind of work more accessible either to creators or to the communities that they serve. I think the UK Canada Immersive Exchange was very much hoping to chip away at that in a small way. That's at its heart, it was trying to lower that barrier and provide some support. But at the end of the day, it's a program that has 24 creators on it. That's a small number of people. So it's just interesting to think, what else can we do? What else can be done, I suppose, which is a very big, partly rhetorical question, I guess, about what we can do. But I guess maybe I'll put to the rest of the panel just for some maybe quick thoughts on any other kind of support, anything else you think that would help this industry to lower this barrier and make these kinds of projects more open to others. Antoine.
I think it's important to never forget that yes, we are producer, artists, but we are citizens. I think we're both things, and I think something we need to do is, I'm not sure as a personal level in my own company I can make that happen, but as someone that can do lobby on the cultural branch of my government, I can help that to make that happen. I think we need to remember that we're part of a whole. Like my institution, they call each other, they call producer every 6 months to gather our feeling, what we think they should do, because in a way they're spending our taxes, and I'm really happy to have governments that are doing that, even at a European level. Media is doing that. They're voting right now their next 6 to 7 year budget on how to make culture accessible, how to make that accessible. So I think to make that efficient, we need to think as not how can I do that in my own little company and on my next project, or still you can do that, it's great, but also to remember that we're part of an industry that is connected, and if they hear the same kind of echoes all the time, they will go that way, because they're here to please us, because they're here to push us to go the way we want to. I think that's important to act globally on that and not maybe too selfishly on our company. It's not really a precise answer, but that's something that people usually forget to do lobbying on their institution, to go to see them, to take time to talk to them. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, I have 10 projects to produce, I don't have time to do that. You need to take time to do that.
Yeah, lovely. And maybe Nat, oh, sorry, Sandra, you had your hand up.
I can't see the other digital hands up, so I'm not sure if anybody had a digital hand up. I was going to say, I'm going to put myself in French. We say entre l'arbre et l'écorce. How do you say this in English? Between the wall and the spade or something like that? Isn't there like an expression where
in Canadian French?
stuck in between two uncomfortable places.
Oh, so it's between a rock and a hard place.
Okay, so I'm gonna stick myself between a rock and a hard place, but it's the first thought that kind of feels more truthful to my current situation. But I was gonna say, one thing's for certain, I do understand, specifically when it's public funding in the case of CMF or British Council, when there are public funds involved, I do understand the necessity for the public funds to ensure that the creators they're financing have the background support to prove that there will be sort of a, I don't want to say return on revenue, but minimized risks. It is taxpayers' money, and it is that's why I'm mentioning the rock and the hard place. I do understand the need for institutions to ensure that they have a security, or they minimize the taxpayers' money's risk when they're betting on creativity. On the other side, if we want to ensure a diversity and inclusivity of different individuals and within this realm that's just nascent, and not recreate what happened in other media that are well established, we need to ensure that this diversity of voices and creative minds do form part of the people working on a project. So I know we have regulations in Canada about gender diversity, but that really comes in different other formats. So I would say maybe a way forward between the rock and the hard place, because everybody has their rightful way of thinking about how to approach things. I do think that it's important that perhaps producers that are applying ensure that they understand they need to support within their applications and the way they defend their teams, that part of their teams are not necessarily from the game video industry. They could be, but they may not have to be. If they look for an artistic director, maybe that artistic director doesn't have to be part of a studio. Maybe that artistic director is fully independent and lives in Louisiana, and their voice is what we need for this experience, for instance. That willing to defend the diversity amongst a team, necessarily between the rock and the hard place, falls upon the producers. And I think maybe it's partly, it's a halfway, but you were saying, Antoine, as there's your role as a citizen, but I think roles as producers, I've been finding myself more and more in situations where when it's my own team, I do it myself because I believe in it strongly, but I found myself realizing sometimes acting as mentors on initiatives that nobody thought that there was a problem in the team being specifically one category of people, but their project is supposed to appeal to a diversity of individuals. And sometimes it's just suggesting, even following regulations for IPs, you could still share part of your IP for the music and composition and really go elsewhere. Just make sure that within the people working on a project, there are different voices. I think that responsibility is something the producers can take on for sure.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay,
I
I totally agree with that. However, I think the institution like the CMF and others in France and UK and everywhere have to also take that into consideration in the way we build the policies and the way we finance and support the projects. And I think this year was a big wake-up call with all that happened in the US, unfortunately. But we have to start listening more and act more to ensure there's a safe space for artists and producers to be able to get their ideas to the world.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Okay, we've just got a couple of minutes left. First of all, I am glad that in our panel on international collaboration, we had at least one language translation conversation, because it's not really an international collaboration if we don't have to sort of find the right language between us. So that's good. I'd like to end just on just a little bit of advice, really, from each of you. If you could just maybe really briefly, I'm really interested to know from the huge amount of experience you all have between you on the projects you've worked on across borders and with immersive projects in particular. What's the one thing you wish you'd maybe known at the start that might have helped you? It could be on a really practical level. It could have been, I wish I'd known how to handle IP better or sharing IP, or it could be on a more philosophical sort of cultural exchange level. But I'm just interested in what advice you'd maybe give to other creators out there looking at this world. Maybe I'll come to Antoine first.
First one. So I was trying to think of different kind of things. So I need to choose one. I think Sandra heard me talk a lot about the fact that finding a co-producer is like finding love. And I think I totally agree, Natalie, is like a wedding. It's really important to find a proper co-producer. And I think every producer knows that. Something I discovered recently on how to refine this criteria is you need to find a co-producer that either knows technology or is curious about technology. If you go with a co-producer that tells you straight away, live action is the best thing ever, and don't even want to try the other techniques, even if he's an amazing producer, he might not be fitted to co-produce with you immersive content, because we need to try a lot of different techniques to be sure that something works. Sometime on the same project, you need to use animation, 2D digital double, motion capture, volumetric capture on the same project, because every shot requires different techniques. You need to use AI, deepfake, and sometimes you will need to test a lot of things to realize that you don't need them, in fact. And I think that requires a lot of patience, and also it needs to be a curiosity or a love a little bit for techniques. Of course, technique is a small part of what we do, but the other stuff is more classic to any co-production. Doing art, script, storytelling, storyboarding, that it's part of every kind of entertainment in this field. But I think because it's XR and because it's new, I think I will say something different in 10 years. Yeah, find a co-producer that wants to know more about text or technology, or are already in love by technology. I think that will be kind of a precise little advice. If I have more time, I may say something else. But...
No, that's great. Thank you, Antoine. Sandra, what from your point of view?
I was trying to think of an advice of something that I've learned and made me think like, oh, I wish I had known this from the get-go. But I think I'm going to say it's the opposite. Something we all know from the get-go and that you need to not forget. I think we are kids at heart. And when you go to a playground and you see kids and they just go to each other and that's just intuitive and it works, that can still work in the actual business side and the actual field of, especially a field that's so, still nascent and still fluid and flexible. I've been happy to realize that tapping on other people's doors, if you tell me you need to meet a co-producer in LA for a fiction film, it feels like unsurmountable. Who's your contact? How do you get in touch with them, etc.? That's never been my interest anyway, so I never had to have that problem. But finding people and shared events, meeting them, talking with them, finding that there's a rightful connection, making jokes with them, and mostly from that humor, you start riffing off on other collaborations. That's been the start of most of my personal relationships and most of the collaborations as well. And I think we forget that it's a small field still. That's why we keep insisting on why it needs to be made bigger and with more people in it. But because it is still small, it's still, I think people don't have the big head yet. It's still easy to knock on doors and discuss and chat and suggest ideas for partnerships. So maybe a reminder is the world is still, the world is still big for a small amount of people in it. Just throw yourself at it. It's just not that hard. Worst that can happen is, you're goofy, so what, So that's, I would say just go at it. It's a field where clumsiness is welcomed. It's expected. We're all new here.
Thank you. And I think we've got about a minute left. So I would like to come to Shaji. Have you any thoughts on this as well?
Yeah, I think that sometimes consider that it might be better that it doesn't happen rather than doing it for its own sake. And to start really small, to make sure that you do loads and loads of small tests before you jump in and do something really big. And the other thing is, whatever time you think it's going to take, double it, because that's really key, is take the time it deserves to be something good and not empty and vacuous and meaningless. That's got to be the takeaway, right?
Brilliant. I can see all other panelists nodding about this one. And very finally, Natalie.
Very quickly, I think outside the box, try new things. Don't be afraid to fail, because you learn more when you fail than when you succeed, I think. Not that I want to fail every time, don't get me wrong, but we should not be aware of trying things, because that's how we discover new things.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate your time. We're going to stop there because we are at time now. I hope everyone's really enjoyed this panel. We've gone on to a lot of different topics around how we collaborate and work together, and how we make sure as many people as possible are included in this particular party. So I really hope you enjoy the rest of the programme at UK House, and of course South by Southwest, and look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in the real world at some point in the future. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Becky.
Bye.
Merci.
Thanks. Merci.